All right, it's time. It's time for the best time of the year, right? You might be thinking, what, Thanksgiving? No, not Thanksgiving. Oh, okay, the winter holidays coming up with, Christmas and New Year's and all that stuff. No, not talking about that either. Of course, I am talking about the ESPN Playoff Machine, the time when you start firing it up and looking at who you think is going to make the playoffs. Always fun to do. Again, if you want to you do it yourself, ESPN Playoff Machine, search that and you can find it. I went through and I predicted every single game remaining on the season. These were my picks. It took a little bit of work, admittedly, to get every single one on the screen. I don't expect you to look through each one, but if you're curious about a specific team, you can come back to this point in the video, pause it, and just try to check it out that way. But simple enough, right? Pick every single game, and then let's see who would make the playoffs if I am correct about every single game, which I obviously will not be. Well, let's see. This would be the AFC, and for Pittsburgh, you have to feel good about seeing your team on there after a disappointing loss. But let's go 1 through 7. The Chiefs would get the 1 seed, and that makes sense, right? These projections are pretty much always going to mean that the team I think is the best in the conference, if they have the best record, are going to, basically win out and get the 1 seed. It's not how that works, obviously, but even so, the Chiefs have a little bit of a window. They can even lose a game or potentially 2 and still get the 1 seed. I think their odds of getting the 1 seed are very high, and I would have actually Baltimore getting the 2 seed here, which would be very interesting. I do think Baltimore is a real threat to the Chiefs, and it would be interesting if they played Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh has beaten Baltimore this season. The Jacksonville Jaguars would get the 3 seed in this scenario, and then the Dolphins the 4 seed, which is a little bit interesting. I think most people would have thought Miami the 3 seed and Jacksonville the 4 seed, but again, schedule comes into play here a little bit, right? It is worth mentioning, Miami does play Baltimore in Week 17, and that actually would be a big game because if Miami were to win that game, I have them losing it. If they were to win that game, it would bump them all the way up to the 2 seed there. So definitely opportunity for Miami. All 3 of those teams are going to kind of battle it out for the 2, 3, and 4 seed, in my opinion. They're all very close. In between each other. And then the other, spots, Cleveland, Houston, and Pittsburgh. Cleveland and Houston both have pretty easy schedules down the stretch. Now, it is one of those interesting things, though, where, sometimes, this is a clearly flawed experiment, right? Because if you're projected to win 7 games by 1 point, you're probably not going to go 7-0, right? I have Cleveland going 5-2, but would they be able to do that? Will they drop a game that they could, that they shouldn't drop? Is worth mentioning. Even if they did drop a game here, they would still be the 5 seed. So, hey, go 4-3. That should be enough, not just to get you to the playoffs, but get you to 5 seed, the best wild card seed. Although in the AFC, I don't know how much that actually matters. Whereas, in the NFC, matters a lot. Houston and Pittsburgh at the 6 and 7 seed is worth mentioning as well. They do both have a little bit of leeway, as if they lost a game, they would still be, obviously Houston would drop to the 7 seed there, but they would both still be playoff teams in that scenario. To look at the AFC as a whole, we'll start with the AFC East, the top left, and then work our way around. The Dolphins, we already talked about them. Buffalo, I still have going 8-9, and the Bills have a really tough schedule. So, they basically have to make up 3 games that I have them losing. That feels like a lot that they would have to make up. And again, it's really the next 3 games with the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys being their next 3. I have them losing to all those games, and I also have them losing the final game of the season to Miami. Now, that could be a little bit weird. Maybe Miami doesn't play their starters, which could be a win for Buffalo. But for the Bills, you almost have to win at least 2 of those, right? Win at least 2 of those. That would get you to 10 wins, assuming you also beat the Patriots and the Chargers, which, they've lost to the Patriots this season, so there's no guarantee there. But the Bills, they just have a brutal schedule, and this was why it was such a big deal for them to fall apart early on in the year, is now that they're kind of playing good football, it might be too little too late. We kind of know about the rest of the division. Patriots and Jets probably aren't doing a lot. I also don't have the Chargers making the playoffs. Again, they're 3 games behind Pittsburgh, so there's a sizable gap there. Denver, I also have going 7-10. I know people are high on Denver. I think I'm not quite as high on Denver. So it's not out of the question that they can make the playoffs. But again, if it's 11 wins they have to get, they're going to have some work to do even at 5-5. However, the good thing for them is they play Cleveland this upcoming week. So if they can win that game, which I obviously have them losing, well, that would now put them where they don't have to make up 2 more games, and they would have the tiebreaker in that scenario. So if you can win that game and then maybe just find a way to win a couple more that I have them losing, that would completely change things. So it isn't dead. They're not dead by any means. There's definitely still hope for them. The Raiders, I don't have them winning another game this season. Bit of a tough schedule, and I don't think they're a great team either. The rest of the way, on the right side of the screen, you have the, I already talked about the Ravens, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. Cincinnati, without Joe Burrow, not expecting much. Already talked about Jacksonville and Houston. And then Indianapolis is kind of the other interesting team because, Tennessee, I don't think they're doing much. Indianapolis is interesting, right? Because their record, as it stands right now, they are still in the playoff hunt. They play Tampa Bay this next week. 2 teams trying to get into the playoff, picture. That could be a big win. I believe I did have them losing that game. So, as in, I had the Colts losing that game. So, there's an opportunity to maybe pick up some ground. And they also play the Pittsburgh Steelers later on in the year. So, hey, you win next week, beat the Steelers, and then boom, you're that 7th seed. So it's actually not out of the question at all that they could make something happen. Let's move on to the NFC. Why don't we? And again, like I said, if you're a team that I think is very good and has the best record, you're probably going to, still be the number 1 seed. Although it is worth mentioning, not by a lot, right? I have Detroit just a game behind Philadelphia. Now, it still would require a little bit of work from Detroit here on out to, find a way to, get it, because you don't just have to, tie the Eagles. The Eagles would have the tiebreaker, so you have to actually find a way to, have a better record. So it's really 2 games is the difference there. But still, hey, Detroit, you're in it, and that will go a long way getting the 1 seed, I think, not having to play both the Niners and the Eagles, only having to play one of them. The Niners, I have projected as the 3 seed. We kind of view them as the 2 seed, but you know what? They've lost some games, and Detroit has lost less, which makes it easier for them. Now, again, if Minnesota drops 1 more game, then San Francisco would have the tiebreaker and would be, or excuse me, I said Minnesota. If Detroit drops 1 more game, the Niners would have the tiebreaker and would be able to jump them. With the 4 seed, I have Tampa Bay, and that part isn't necessarily so surprising. I think the 10-7 record with both them and the Saints, we can talk about them together because they're kind of, in line. They both have really easy schedules down the stretch. I mean, the Buccaneers, I have only projecting to lose 1 more game. Now, I think they'll lose more than 1 more game. I do. Just like I think the Saints will lose probably more than 2 more games. At least there's a good chance that happens. But I do think there is a world where both make the playoffs, and we'll talk about that a bit more once we talk about who their competition is. Dallas, they're great. Dallas is almost certainly going to be able to beat a 5 seed. Feels like that's where they're going to be. It is worth mentioning they play Philadelphia again this season. I had Philadelphia winning. If Dallas wins, nothing would change. They would still be the 5 seed. Philadelphia would still be the 1 seed. But then you would just need one different thing to go your way. Like, let's say that changes, and then, the Eagles lose another game that I have them winning. Then all of a sudden, Dallas would jump all the way up to the 1 seed. So there is some potential there. But for now, I think 5 seed feels probably where they're going to be. But hey, week 14 coming up in a few weeks, they win that game, things change. And then the final team to talk about, Minnesota. I know that they had kind of a disappointing loss. There still are some issues there, but at the end of the day, I still think they make the playoffs. Relatively easy schedule down the stretch. So let's talk about the teams they're competing against. So in the NFC, here we go, going down the list. Talked about the Eagles and the Cowboys. Washington and New York both are not great. Do not have them winning too many more games. Only 1 game combined between those 2 teams. The NFC West, I think the 2 most interesting teams to talk about probably that I don't have making the playoffs are in this division, the Seahawks and the Rams. And really what it comes down to is they're both, they have tough schedules. And Seattle especially, it feels crazy to talk about Seattle as not a playoff team, but their next 4 weeks are absolutely brutal. They play the 49ers twice, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. I mean, those are legitimately what most people consider the 3 best teams in the NFC, and they kind of almost feels like they have to go 2-2 in that stretch. I did look at it, and if they can go 2-2 in that stretch instead of 0-4 like I had them going, they actually could make the playoffs. They would make the playoffs in that scenario. And in fact, if they sweep the 49ers and all else holds, they would get the 3 seed. That's still on the table, although you have to sweep the 49ers. And is this going to happen? It's going to be tough. It is worth mentioning, like I said, I think there's a good chance that either the Saints or the Buccaneers fall below 10-7. So because of that, perhaps you don't need as many wins as this is saying. Like, for example, maybe you're able to just win one game that I don't have you winning. And because of that, maybe the Saints lose a game that I have them winning. All of a sudden, that would be enough to get you in. The Rams need a little bit more work than that. Again, they're 4-6, so they have more work to do, and they still do have some tough games on their schedule. But again, same kind of mindset. Can you get to the 9-8 record and get the 7 seed? It's possible for the Rams. Can't forget about them yet. They are still a team you have to pay attention to. And in fact, for the Rams, it might come down to a pretty key Thursday night game. In fact, if everything else held the way I said, but the Rams are able to beat the Saints on that Thursday night game, which I had them losing to the Saints in that game, then kind of all bets are off. And in fact, the Rams, that would be enough for them to get into the playoffs. That's all they would have to do is win that game. That would put them at 9-8. It would be a 3-way tie with Seattle, LA, and the Saints, and the Rams would be the team to get in. So they're not dead yet at all, actually, interestingly enough. Packers would have to go on a deep run just to round out the rest of the list. The Saints aren't in bold, but I do have them making the playoffs. Just the playoff machine still only, for whatever reason, it acts like there's still only 2 wild cards, so not sure what's going on there. Atlanta, again, they can make something happen. They for sure can make something happen. It's a little bit tougher for them than like the Rams because, Atlanta plays the Saints this upcoming week, actually. So you might think, oh, wait, win that game. Now you get the 7 seed. No, because then Seattle would actually get the 7 seed. So you would need something else to go your way. You'd probably need to find a way to win another game realistically for them. Like they play Tampa Bay as well. You win both of those games, though, you wouldn't just be in the playoffs. You'd win the divisions. So, if you can find a way to do that, go 3-0 in your next 3 because they play the Jets in between those, then they can make the playoffs. But that's probably what they have to do. Their season feels like it's these next couple of weeks. So, yeah, that's the playoff picture. That's how I view all these teams. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.